We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So with the board's pleasure, I'll reach out to the Conservation District tomorrow and start working on that process and get something set up with who we'll be negotiating with.
Please, thank you very
Okay.
much, Dr. Lewis.
Sure.
Any other discussion before we move on to reports?
I think if I could just thank everyone for, who did put in a bid, both successful and unsuccessful. I know there's a lot of effort on different people's parts, and we do appreciate the interest in the school.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olson. Anyone else? All right. Principals reports. Mrs. Morel.
So I'll probably steal Mr. Cole's thunder at some point with an IU update, so.
He's shaking his head no.
Nice to see you back. Just for parents to be aware, PSSA testing online did not take place today as a result of the internet service being out. It came back on early this afternoon, 1:30-ish, can't really remember the time. Seems to be working very well. We apologize for any inconvenience that may have done to plans. We plan to continue with math testing tomorrow for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, with 4 being in the afternoon. Wednesday, math will continue with the same schedule, and then we'll see how that goes with regard to science. We may move those days to the 5th and the 9th, depending upon need and what's going on within the district at that time. So we'll send out an update with regard to those testing days as soon as we secure them.
Michelle, is there a window of time that they have to be completed?
May 13th, I believe is. However, I would, since we've lost a day to testing, if we don't have them made up by the 13th, I would be comfortable reaching out to Jay Gift or the district assessment coordinator could and ask for an extension. They've been very helpful with that in the past, so I don't potentially foresee a problem if I do ask for a little leniency with regard to that date.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In the fall, we were lucky enough to have Colleen Chilson come and offer the Too Good for Drugs program. In the fall, grades 3 through 6 were presented 10 total lessons broken down by subject area. In the spring of 2022, grades K to 2 were presented 10 total lessons broken down with regard to different subject areas. So we thank her for those lessons that she provided to all of our students at Snyder Elementary School. And we've begun the PVAS verification process with our teachers. It will roll to them, then roll to me, then back to the teachers and on to Dr. DeLosio for final submission. That whole project should be completed by May, the end of May, I believe, so that process is underway. PVAS is Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. It plays a role in the teacher's growth. It has to have a cycle of 3 years. It does not count the number of kids that were advanced and proficient as a number on the test, but it's looking at a child from the first day that they came into the classroom to the first day of testing to see if they've made a year or plus worth of growth. So that's when I throw that acronym of PVAS around. It's a growth standard for the teachers, and in order to have that, they have to have accumulated a number of years in the classroom in the same place to make that be part of their Danielson model. And I believe the end number that they have to have is a minimum of 11 students on their roster for it to count as part of that growth. So sorry if I throw a word around and thought I better provide a little bit of explanation there. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Morel.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hendrick.
We are also in the middle of the PSSA exams for 7th and 8th grade. We gave the ELA exams last week. This week will be math and science. Beginning tomorrow. We were not scheduled to test today, and we're testing paper, but luckily we didn't miss a day. We're super excited to welcome our new staff. It's been a long and thorough search that Dr. DeLosio and a number of the teachers that I have gone through, and I'm excited to welcome both of you to our faculty, and happy to state that As of right now, faculty is complete. We have no openings at the high school, so very excited about that. Northern Tier students recently completed their NOCTI exams last week to hopefully earn industry certifications and credentials. Also, outstanding student recognition, Aiden Thomas, Cole Galabutis, Glenn Romberger, Graceland Peterson, Jade Fairley, Mason Houseneck, Nick Pizzella, and Timothy Booth were all recognized in their shops, with Colton Watkins and Joe Quattrini, juniors that have the highest GPA in their shops. Our 2021 Serenade yearbook, last year's yearbook, was chosen by Jostens for it to be a 2022 lookbook. It was one of only about 450 yearbooks selected from over 1,000 submitted to be judged. It's going to be sent to over 1,100 high schools in the coming weeks. It's used by schools across the country as a way to share designs and inspire kids for their upcoming yearbook. Dr. Delosio has a copy of the press. Oh, she already passed it out to you if you guys didn't see it in the paper. I did have a couple of the editors set to come at our last meeting that was canceled, unfortunately, and we weren't able to connect today, but the editors might stop in at our next meeting. FBLA winners. Our FBLA just competed in Hershey. Middle level winners, third place went to Sophie Hyatt, Chase Wheeler, Brendan Cook, and Lily Shaw. Second place, Brady Flynn, Carter Blather, Aubrey Husted, and Chris Kamath. And first place winner, first in the state, was Mackenzie Chamberlain, 8th grader. And we did have 2 qualify for nationals at the middle level in Chicago. Sophie Hyatt and Lily Shaw will both be going to Chicago to represent us. And I guess the last thing that I would have is just thank you to everybody that helped Mr. Howie and I out last week. We were a little short-staffed. Not that people wanted to be out, but we tried to. The only place I think I didn't help out was the kitchen last week. Alice kept me out of there. But it was a busy week for a couple days for us, so a number of staff stepped up and helped out a lot, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, everybody. And that is it for me tonight, Pete.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hendrick. So NTCC, Mr. Cole.
And guess what? I do have a report. Hard to believe. Hey, like I said, I hope to be back with you guys in 2 weeks. I'll find out tomorrow. So hopefully I'll be back to you live and in person. So here it goes, folks. First of all, Saturday morning, starting at 9:45 down at the Northern Tier Career Center's parking lot. There's a big sale going on. Everything from office equipment to electrical hardware, machines, etc. Again, it starts at 9:45. Be there. Like I said, there's tons of items. If you go out on the Northern Tier Career Center website, you'll find out what they've got up for sale. Also going on right now through the 6th of May is Employers Day. There's a little over 30 employers right now that are down there interviewing present and full-time summer and or co-op opportunities with the students down there. Also 33 to 35 nursing students passed their CNA exams. That's a good amount of students there. Again, co-op students are right now totaling 33 down there. Career Outlook, students engaged in resume writing, job searching, and interviewing for positions with the help of Mrs. Farley. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe that the school year is ready to wrap up. Senator Yawn and the superintendents, including our own Dr. Delosio, were at the facility for a luncheon and visit down there as he toured the facility down there. It sounds like that was a success. And if you haven't heard, like I said, I'm going through 3 months here, folks, so, or 2 months, whatever it is, months I've been off. But the Guthrie Northern Tier Career Center LPN partnership, that is going to, the CRE is going to be paying a full tuition cost for the 12-month program in their LPN program down there. And of course, details are all down there in the site. Again, that is a big plus, especially when there's a need for seats built down there so that they can keep the program going. Also, Penn State Wilkes-Barre is right now working with the Northern Tier Career Center on a partnership that will allow machine tool technology program. And also, the awards day is coming up on May the 26th down the Towanda High School Auditorium at 9:30 a.m. and at 1 p.m. And that wraps up 2 months of Northern Tier Career Center stuff that I compiled here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Anything from PSBA?
Oh, yeah.
2 months?
I got that too. PSBA is now, I think I sent everybody out information, but if you haven't heard, PSBA is now the consortium of school board association with 25 other states after they backed out of the National School Board Association. I also want to say that a good report came last week on the Advocacy Day down at the state capitol, and I don't want to put Ms. Riley on the spot, but I want to tell her thank you for going down and taking part in the Advocacy Day down at the state capitol. I appreciate that. Also, if you haven't found this out on the PSBA website, check out the 2022 State of Pennsylvania Education Report that's been released. 250 districts responded, and I think that's kind of low because normally there's about 300 or better that do respond, but I'm guessing it's because of the pandemic issues and what have you. I'm just going to highlight a few things here for us. The Pennsylvania public school enrollments ranked 7th in the United States, and that includes homeschoolers and charters. 1.5 million in actual school districts, so, but we've lost 3.2% of the school census. Challenges that were identified, of course, we are experiencing, like everybody else in the state, staffing shortages, themselves, current staff aides, and along with governmental guidance as the largest obstacles as far as what do you do, what don't you do with masks, and you can roll with that basically, I guess. COVID, socioeconomical issues are the largest instructional challenges that are facing the districts. Finances, charter schools, funding the top list. Believe it or not, the last quote is $2.1 billion in spending that school districts are handing out to charter schools. And to sum everything up, although it doesn't sound like a great report, but the public still favors public education as a value. Total perception amongst everyone in the state is 56%, with the parents that did respond, 66%. So obviously we're doing something good here in the state. That's what I've got. And of course, if you have any questions on how to get into the State of Education report or anything else, give me a holler and I'll get back to you on how to get into it. Thank you, Mr. Petrini. It's good to be back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Yes, it's good to have you back. Appreciate it. All right, Satterley Creek Environmental Center, Mrs. Agnew.
Yeah, they had a work bee about 2 weeks ago down there to do some of the cleaning. They went through the trails. There was a lot of branches and trees that come down with the wind and the weather out there. So I think there's a few more things to do, but they cleaned up a lot of it. And they started, I think there was a couple of organizations that have been there, but they're starting to use it already, besides the people that are walking the trails and stuff. So that's about it for now.
All right. Very nice. Thank you very much. So I'd just like to congratulate all the students and all their great achievements Mr. Handrick talked about. But with Teacher Appreciation Week going on, I'd like to say most kids wouldn't be where they're at today without the hard work of our teachers. New ones, those that are coming on, those that have been here for a really long time, those that we're going to miss as they're retiring and moving on. They do a great job here at SARE, and I'd like to thank all of them for their hard work and their dedication throughout all the years. That's all I have.
Before I give my report, I'd like to invite Dr. Tejan forward to do a grant report to the board.
So over the past couple of months, we have applied for quite a few.
And then hold on, can you move that just closer so those out there could hear as well? Thank you.
I don't have a loud teacher voice. So over the past couple of months, we have applied for quite a few grants in various areas. So I'll just briefly describe each of them. So we applied for and just received notification that we did receive a grant for the community school-based behavioral health team. So this will provide a team that'll be housed at the junior-senior high school. It'll provide crisis response as well as individual counseling for students. The team will include one master's level therapist and then 2 bachelor's level therapists. So we're hopeful that this will be up and running at the beginning of next school year. So fingers crossed. Homeless Children and Youth Grant was in the amount of $8,000. So we are still waiting for a response on this. If received, it would provide additional funding to support families who are experiencing homelessness in our area, or within our school district. Highmark Grant in the amount of $5,000. We applied for this in conjunction with Mr. Alt. So the grant through Highmark would assist funding a summer fitness program that would give students an opportunity to learn about fitness and to safely use fitness equipment. So we are still waiting for a response on this one as well. Meaningful Watershed Educational Experiences Grant. We applied for this in collaboration with the Blasted Media Unit, who really spearheaded the whole grant writing process of this one. So we should be hearing shortly whether this one will be awarded. So this would be a 3-year commitment if we are successful, and the focus would be on environmental sciences. The PA Smart Advancing Computer Science and STEM Education Grant was in the amount of $500,000. So if awarded, this would allow us to create a STEM lab at the elementary school, as well as increase our offerings at the high school level. Last but not least, we most recently applied for a grant through the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. And this one would be specific to support students' mental health needs. So the grant was written in an attempt to secure a school social worker for 2 years. And that amount would have been $150,000. So again, we're waiting to hear back on that. We should know more mid-June. So really hopeful that we're successful with that one as well. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tejan.
So I'd like to move over to Mrs. Waite, if you want to give an update on curriculum.
So at the beginning of the school year.
So may I ask if you will come forward? Mr. Cole and Mr. Claypool are having difficulty hearing, so.
I'm forward, wait.
Right up here.
That seems a little close. How about over in this vicinity? Over here?
You can sit there and put the microphone right
Oh,
here.
excellent. This is good.
This is so that they can hear you.
So at the beginning of the school year, prior to my beginning, a cycle of curriculum was established, and the purpose of it is so the district can, with the core curriculum, be reviewed, implemented, monitored through a cyclical process. That was something that was missing prior to this year, and some of our curricular materials showed that. I won't list years, but our social studies program was one of those. So now moving forward, we'll be following this process to ensure that curricular materials are up to date and relevant to our goals as a district. It'll be a collaborative effort with teachers, and we'll work together to maintain the cycle at both buildings, K through 12. Next year will be an implementation year for supplemental materials and a year for our humanities department, so music, art, and world languages, to pilot curriculum materials that they'd like to incorporate into their instruction. All other departments will be just as busy. They'll either be reviewing and revising their current curriculums to incorporate best practices, or developing new curriculum maps to include new curricular materials, or they'll be monitoring their current curriculums to prepare for the next phase of the cycle. Next year is also going to be a pretty big undertaking in the science department, as the state of Pennsylvania has finally decided to update some of their standards. With that, it's been a multiple year process, and they're now in the final phases of making the statewide shift to the updated standards. The date is to be determined. It was actually supposed to they were already supposed to be established at this point, but they're taking a little bit more time than anticipated. The new standards will reflect the next generation science standards, which are national science standards that are interdisciplinary in nature and enable students to learn science by doing science rather than just learning through a textbook. So the big push is actually to move elementary classrooms away from just textbooks and focusing more on hands-on experiments. Our high school obviously does an excellent job with that. Any one of our 7 through 12 science classrooms you walk into, they're in the lesson. So there will be a big shift to incorporate reading, writing, math, everything right into a math lesson. So the comprehensive update is the first Pennsylvania State Science Standards update in nearly 2 decades. And they will take effect July 2024. So we have a couple of years to make the curricular change in that direction as well. And once the new science standards are officially released by the state, we will, as a school district, as many other school districts will be doing, we'll be realigning our existing curriculums at the high school and the elementary school to the new standards. This year, as I said, with our cycle of curriculum, we were focusing on supplemental materials. So over the course of the past 6 months, we've researched a number of curricular materials that will be implemented during the 22 school year. The focus is focusing on ESL, gifted, and Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, so the students who need a little extra support in their core content areas. Just a few of the many, there will be certain programs to help with foundational literacy development. We have also looked into and we're moving through with hands-to-mind interventions and manipulatives, so it's using manipulatives in small group for math. Word Gen, which has been in the high school before and kind of drifted off with COVID. And it's a Tier 2 vocabulary weekly focus, interdisciplinary, so all departments focus on using the vocabulary and how the kids use that across the interdisciplinary content areas. And we're also planning for supplemental instructional professional development as well. So just a couple of things to work on.
A couple. Thank you very much, Ms. Slate.
Our learning loss facilitator, Mrs. Ely, is going to give some data. We'll just leave that right over there. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I have a bit of a data update, which there will be more details if you come to the curriculum meeting. We kind of get a little deeper into some of the data. So far this year, teachers in grades K through 8 have been assessing students throughout the year to collect data that they're then using in their instructional planning. The assessments are primarily done 3 times each year, so beginning of September, beginning of January, and right now we're in the midst of the first 2 weeks of May. We're doing our final assessment for the year. Kindergarten assesses for a basic understanding of letter, sound, and number recognition. Grades 1 through 8 assess students on fluency and comprehension of reading passages, as well as grade level math skills. Grades 4 and 8 are also using a standardized test that we have online to gauge student understanding on science concepts, and that's to prepare them for the PSSA test in those grade levels. Students in grades 7 through 12 are assessed through the use of classroom diagnostic tools. If you've heard students talk about CBTs, that's what they're talking about, in the areas of math, English, and biology. All of the data that's collected from these assessments have been analyzed during our data team meetings that we've been having throughout the year, and we've had 5 of them so far this year. Those data team meetings are basically used to reflect on teaching practices, create action plans going forward for groups of students, and then create those small groups to remediate with. So I wanted to point out a few highlights. So in kindergarten, 76% of our students were on benchmark, which at the beginning of the year is 4 letters that they have to be able to recognize for upper letter recognition. So that was in September. So we were doing pretty good to begin with. In March, that benchmark moves. It is now 19 letters, and we still grew. We had 87% that were on benchmark. So the benchmark measurement moves, but we still saw tremendous growth. As far as number recognition, students do not need to recognize any numbers until November, so that's when we start assessing. At that point, it's 5 numbers they need to recognize. So 86% of our kindergartners met that benchmark in November. So then in March, their benchmark moves, it's 15 numbers, and at that point, we had 88% of students. So only 12% of the students in kindergarten were below the benchmark at that point, which is, I mean, they came in, it seems, with some pretty good knowledge, but we still were able to grow that percentage. And I'm sure by the end of this, you know, when they do the reassessment here in the next few weeks, they're going to see a ton of growth again. So that's kindergarten. In 3rd grade, at the beginning of the year, 64% of the 3rd graders were on level according to the benchmark assessment system, which we call the BAS. So there's supposed to be a level N at the beginning of the year, and we had 64% of students that were at that level. By middle of the year, the benchmark moves. Now they have to be on a level N, and 82% were reading on level. So moved the benchmark 1 level, but we still had, you know, almost 20% increase in growth. And that's their instructional reading level, which can be somewhat confusing. So that's just what students can comfortably read with an accuracy rate of 85% or higher and a comprehension level of 75% or better. So it's not what they can read independently on their own, you know, that they might read when they have free time or at night. This is instructional. So some of it is somewhat difficult for them, maybe some of the vocabulary, but that's where you should be instructing them on in the classroom. Then when we look at junior high, in the 7th and 8th grade, students were all evaluated in the fall with that same BAS assessment, and 38 were determined to be in need of small group instruction. So how that determination was made was students who fell below the level Y as 7th graders or below Z, which is the highest level you can get to, as 8th graders were then put into this small group instruction. And these groups have been receiving guided reading during their win time at the end of the day. From that 38 students that have been receiving that small group instruction in the fall, they've been progressing all through the year. It's down to 27 students now for the spring. So that means 11 students have been exited through that because they reached that benchmark of Z. So that's pretty good growth as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Ms. Seeley.
All right, so I guess my few things, yeah. All right, so I wanted to share with the community and the board that Mrs. Morell and I have been connecting with Ray Ann Nocella from Healthy Kids program, and we are investigating having a before and after school program for daycare purposes at the elementary school for our K-6 students. Mrs. Morell conducted a survey with her parent group to see if there was a need. It would give parents the opportunity to stop at the elementary school for a drop-off for daycare. They would leave that room and go right to school that day, and they need time after school as well before pickup. So it would be an on-site program for our K-6 students that we would contract with. So it would be a separate entity, but they would be working within our facility. So they would rent space from us and run their program inside our school building. I would like to acknowledge and compliment Dr. Tejan this evening. She had diligently worked for the special education audit that happened, I think, for weeks through the month of February and maybe a little bit into March. And at the end of that audit, Mark Ishman, who is a gentleman from Harrisburg, he conducts an exit meeting with me. And so we sat in the conference room, and he could not have spoken more highly of Dr. Tejan and her value to our school district and the work and effort that's put into that department. And every T was crossed, every I was dotted, and that's exactly what I like to see. So thank you so much for your hard work and your dedication. With any audit, there's a few things that come forward, and as those things come forward, we'll work through those processes. But one of the things that Mark Ishman said to me at the table was that if he could take Dr. Tejan's files and how she runs her department and use it as a guide or framework for other districts, she would do that. And so I find that to be a very high compliment from the state. And so I acknowledge that, and I thank you. The board thanks you for that as well. Nice work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For those of you that might not know, we have an actress in our presence. Mrs. Alice Bennett was barefoot in the park this weekend. And so I want to compliment you on all that work that you did, and just to, give back to the community in a way that you enjoy doing, Miss Alice. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And so when I leave tonight, I'm going to take some of your goodies to Mr. Cool, since he's missed several weeks of meetings with us. So Mr. Cool, I'm going to stop by with some goodies after the meeting for you. I have a couple here on the table for you from Miss Alice. And for those of you in the community that have seen the Sayer Snapshot, we put it out 3-4 times a year, and we unfortunately missed a retiree coming up, so I want to acknowledge that I missed Dr. Deb Moore, our school psychologist. She will be, at the end of this year, having served our school for 30 years. And so before the end of the school year newsletter goes out, we certainly will acknowledge it and put that out to her. So that was a mistake, and I just wanted to acknowledge that publicly, that it was not done purposefully, but we do appreciate all the work that she's done and what she does as our school psychologist, and I apologize for that error. And the last thing I have on my list is return to play. Mr. Claypool and I spoke today as the athletic director and superintendent. We have not revised our return to play procedures and protocols, and so for students that do have COVID in our spring sports, if they have a release from their doctor, they'll be able to go back to the field and or court or whatever surface they play on for their spring sports. Okay? There you go. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order?
I do, I'm Mrs. Bennett here. I'd just like, thank you very much to you and your staff for being so flexible during the SSA time and moving lunches around, and when there was no testing today, they were all very gracious and helpful, so thank you as always.
Thank you for your constant support of them too, Michelle, communication.
I do want to jump back to roll it right back to me before I push it to Mr. Petrini. So last month, before Easter break, the community relations team came together in the conference room and worked diligently one night filling plastic eggs in bags, and every car got egged with plastic eggs. So we did bags of eggs that were filled with candy and hung it off the side mirror of every vehicle of all of our employees with a little tag on the windshield that said, "You've been egged, the bunny." So that was just something that the community relations team did, and I want to thank them for coming in the night before and helping to distribute the next day to both buildings and making that happen. I know that Officer Burlingame was quite happy about it. He took a picture of it, put it on Facebook. I was worried that I would get a call from Chief that the squad car had gotten egged while it was here at the school that day, but we're okay. And I think everybody enjoyed the candy.
Very nice, thank you very much. Anyone else? I get a
Move for adjournment.
Oh, do we want to discuss Athens?
if you were going to.
Okay. So my understanding is that Athens School District put in a request for proposals for a facility study, and which Sarah did a facility study on our buildings recently. So they're doing a similar thing. And they wanted to add on to that a feasibility study for a merger. So just making everyone aware that the board is aware, but Athens has not officially approached us, my understanding, with anything yet. So I don't know if we want to discuss that at all.
Understanding that that's in play, I mean, I think, the interest on, specifically from my perspective, would be that we do something jointly. But I think it's important that they recognize that, and if there's, interest, to connect with us, and just I think there's, if we're gonna look forward to, potential situation where we come together, I think a study on the front end with us jointly supporting that study would be the best approach.
And I think if we want to, from my perspective, it seems like a lot of the communication with Athens, whether it be about really anything that we could combine, not wholesale, just, if there's anything, any sort of sports, anything, our communication seems to be, we need a system set up. I think we need to open some way that, like, when they have something that they want to tell us, we have a line of communication open, rather than kind of, it's almost rumor, and then we get wind of it. It's not very clearly done. And that's, I'm not putting blame on anyone, just, I think both ends, we should look at that.
I think superintendents and board chairs should certainly have an open level of communication. I think that should be encouraged, and then it opens up discussion on both sides.
Well, I can certainly reach out to Mr. Chersnowski and start that process.
If there's any recommendations for how they want to go about it, or just, I think something continuing open, because there's always things that come up, it seems like, just little things here and there. I mean, I don't want to call anything a little thing, it's all important, but.
I used to have a great working relationship with the Athens board president, but it was changing the election, so they don't really know the current one as well. So. Anyone else? All right, so I had a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.